Hidden in the small town of Westford, Massachusetts, lies a weathered stone carving that may rewrite American history as we know it. Did European explorers reach the New World long before Columbus? Today, we re-uncovering the mystery of the Westford Knight, a centuries-old enigma that holds secrets of lost explorers and forgotten legends. Welcome back, history seekers. In this video, we're diving into one of America's strangest and most controversial archaeological mysteries, the Westford Knight. This mysterious carving has fueled debates for decades, linking it to medieval knights, secret voyages, and even the legendary Knights Templar. Together, we'll explore the evidence, the myths, and the possible truth behind this hidden piece of history. Long before this small corner of Massachusetts became a hub of local legends, before historians and archaeologists started scratching their heads over what it could mean, a curious carving lay quietly on the surface of a weathered rock. It was the late 19th century when locals first began to notice that the lines etched into the stone near the town of Westford didn't look like the usual cracks and crevices carved by time and nature. These lines seemed intentional, like someone had been here before, someone with a story to tell, and they had chosen this stone as their message board to the future. At first, it was dismissed as nothing remarkable. After all, in rural New England, rocks with odd shapes, chips, and grooves aren't exactly uncommon. But as time passed, people began to realize this carving was different. The design on the stone appeared to resemble a figure, a man in armor, perhaps holding a sword, his helmet, and shield faintly outlined as though centuries of erosion had tried their best to erase him, but failed to hide him completely. It wasn't obvious to everyone right away. Some folks saw the figure instantly, while others claimed it was just random scratches, a trick of the light, or the human brain trying to find patterns where none existed. But the whispers began. Who carved this? When was it made? And most importantly, why here? As the whispers grew louder, researchers, historians, and adventurers alike made their way to Westford to see this strange figure for themselves. And that was when the story started to take on a life of its own. The carving became known as the Westford Knight, a name that would soon be linked to theories far beyond what anyone in this quiet Massachusetts town could have imagined. But in those early days of discovery, people didn't have modern dating techniques or laser scans to analyze the stone's age. They relied on their eyes, their instincts, and the tales passed down by locals. Many residents claimed the carving had always been there, that their grandparents and great-grandparents had seen it too, though no one could remember who first mentioned its existence. That mystery only deepened the intrigue. Was this some colonial-era work of art? A Native American carving depicting a warrior? Or could it be something far older, something that would force historians to rewrite the history of the Americas entirely? As word spread beyond Westford, amateur historians began linking the figure to medieval European explorers, specifically a man named Sir James Gunn, said to be part of an expedition led by Scottish nobleman Henry Sinclair in the late 1300s, according to legend. Sinclair and his men sailed across the Atlantic almost a century before Columbus, exploring parts of what is now North America. The story goes that one of these explorers, Sir James Gunn, died during the journey and was buried in Westford, his likeness carved into the rock to mark the spot. If that were true, it would be nothing short of revolutionary. The carving then wouldn't just be a random piece of rock art. It would be a medieval gravestone, a memorial to a lost knight whose presence in America would predate Columbus by decades, maybe even change everything we thought we knew about early exploration. And that possibility was exactly what began to draw attention from across the country. Writers penned articles about it, some convinced it was proof of pre-Columbian exploration, others dismissing it as wild speculation. In the early 20th century, the site became a sort of pilgrimage spot for those fascinated by lost history. People traveled miles just to stand before the carving, to trace the faint lines with their fingers, to imagine a time when armored men might have walked through these quiet Massachusetts woods centuries before European settlement officially began. As photography improved, pictures of the Westford Knight began circulating, fueling both belief and skepticism. Some images seemed to clearly show the outline of a sword, a shield, and a helmeted head. Others insisted it looked like nothing more than random scratches magnified by hopeful imaginations. The debate raged on. Was this the weathered remnant of a medieval knight, a lost explorer from across the sea? Or was it simply a colonial-era carving, perhaps made by bored settlers with more time than skill? Some even suggested it might have been a Native American petroglyph that was misinterpreted by Europeans who desperately wanted to see their own history in the rock. Yet no matter how many experts examined it, no matter how many articles were written for or against its authenticity, the mystery refused to fade. The carving didn't go away. The story didn't die down. Instead, it seemed to grow stronger with every passing decade, as though the Westford Knight was daring each new generation to come closer, to study harder, to finally uncover the truth hidden in the weathered lines of that ancient Massachusetts stone. Now, once the Westford Knight carving had stirred curiosity far beyond the quiet Massachusetts town, the story began to shift from simple mystery into the realm of epic legend. Historians, amateur researchers, and even treasure hunters all started digging deeper into the possibility that this carving wasn't just random scratches on stone, but instead told the tale of explorers who may have reached American shores long before Columbus ever set sail. And at the center of this growing legend was one name that kept appearing over and over again: Sir James Gunn. The story takes us back to the late 1300s, across the Atlantic to Scotland, where a nobleman named Henry Sinclair ruled over the Orkney Islands. Sinclair was a man of influence, wealth, and power, but he was also rumored to be a man of ambition. Some accounts suggest that Sinclair, inspired by tales of distant lands across the sea, organized an expedition to explore what lay beyond the western horizon. If true, this would have been decades before Columbus and even earlier than Norse sagas of Vinland were widely known. And among the men said to have joined this daring journey was Sir James Gunn, a Scottish knight and loyal companion of Sinclair. According to legend, Sinclair's expedition set sail around 1398 with several ships, provisions for a long voyage, and a crew determined to chart unknown territories. The journey, as the story goes, led them across the North Atlantic, possibly stopping at Greenland or Nova Scotia before venturing farther south along the coast of what we now know as New England. It was during this journey, the tale claims, that tragedy struck. Sir James Gunn, one of Sinclair's most trusted men, reportedly died somewhere near what would centuries later become the town of Westford, Massachusetts. Here's where the legend takes an even more fascinating turn. To honor their fallen companion, Sinclair's men supposedly carved a memorial into the stone where Gunn was buried. This, believers argue, is the very carving we now call the Westford Knight. The outline of a knight with a sword and shield, they say, represents Gunn himself, immortalized in stone by his fellow explorers on foreign soil. If that's true, it means that nearly a century before Columbus, Scottish explorers not only reached America, but left behind physical evidence of their presence. For those who support this theory, the carving isn't just art, it's a historical marker, a gravestone, a direct link to a forgotten chapter of exploration that mainstream history books have largely ignored. And it doesn't stop there. Some legends even suggest that Henry Sinclair's voyage might have been connected to the Knights Templar, the secretive order of warrior monks disbanded in the early 1300s whose surviving members supposedly carried hidden knowledge and treasures across Europe and possibly beyond. If Sinclair really had ties to the Templars, and if his expedition did reach America, then the Westford Knight could be more than just a memorial. It could be evidence of a secret mission, a quest for new lands, or even a refuge for Templar secrets far from the reach of European kings and the Church. But as with any legend, the story of Sir James Gunn and the lost explorers lives in a space between history and myth. Supporters point to oral traditions, scattered documents, and deep in the heart of New England, nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering trees, lies a small town called Westford, Massachusetts. It might seem like an ordinary place, just another quiet community in a historic corner of the United States. But beneath its surface lies a secret that has captivated the world's imagination, a secret that whispers of brave knights, perilous journeys, and a time when the unknown stretched as far as the ocean's horizon. Imagine for a moment the year 1398. You are standing on the rugged shores of a windswept, coast watching a fleet of ships prepare for an epic voyage across the turbulent Atlantic. Among them is a seasoned Scottish knight named Sir James Gunn, his face weathered by the elements. Eyes twinkling with adventure and spirit, he adjusts his ornate armor, readying himself for the journey of a lifetime. Accompanying him are fellow Scottish nobles and perhaps an enigmatic group of warrior monks known as the Knights Templar, fleeing persecution in medieval Europe. Together they set sail into the vast expanse of the ocean, driven by dreams of exploration and the promise of a new life in the untamed wilderness of Vinland, a mythical land rumored to lie beyond the sea. Now fast forward to today. As you wander through the quiet streets of Westford, a sense of wonder washes over you. For here, in this unassuming town, lies a piece of that forgotten history. A single weathered stone carving depicting a knight astride a rearing horse, known simply as the Westford Knight, serves as the only tangible link to that daring expedition, leaving us to ponder the very real possibility that this intrepid band of explorers, led by the valiant Sir James Gunn, may have set foot in these very lands centuries before Christopher Columbus ever dreamed of the New World. And so begins our tale of the Westford Knight, a captivating mystery that blurs the lines between legend and reality. Join me as we delve into the annals of history, uncovering the secrets of this enigmatic carving and exploring the extraordinary claims that suggest medieval Europeans may have truly reached the shores of North America long before history remembers. To fully understand the intrigue surrounding the Westford Knight, we must first turn our attention to the enigmatic Knights Templar. Emerging in the late 12th century during the Second Crusade, the Templars were a holy order of warrior monks dedicated to protecting pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land. However, as the Crusades lost momentum, their purpose shifted, leading to accusations of heresy and persecution at the hands of King Philip IV of France. Forced into exile, many Templars fled, some seeking refuge in Scotland under the protection of King Robert the Bruce. Could it be that these persecuted warriors found a new home in the wilds of Vinland? And did they bring with them not only their martial prowess, but also ancient treasures and forbidden knowledge from their European headquarters? Now let's shift our focus to Henry Sinclair, a Scottish nobleman and Grand Master of the Order of St. John in Scotland. In 1398, he embarked on a daring voyage to explore and possibly conquer the mythical land of Vinland. According to historical records, Sinclair's fleet consisted of 3 ships and a large crew, including fellow nobles and potentially a contingent of Knights Templar escaping persecution. Their journey was fraught with peril, battling storms and encountering hostile natives. But they pressed on, driven by the promise of new lands and untold riches. The records claim that they reached the shores of what is now Massachusetts, where they established a settlement and returned to Scotland with valuable resources such as timber and other natural products. But wait a minute. How could a medieval Scottish fleet have navigated the treacherous Atlantic Ocean centuries before the Age of Discovery? What navigational tools or techniques did they employ to make such a monumental journey? This is where the story takes a turn into the realm of the unknown. Historians have debated the authenticity of Sinclair's voyages, questioning the accuracy of the historical records and the very existence of Vinland. Some argue that these tales were nothing more than medieval myths or fabrications intended to promote Scottish exploration and trade. Now let's turn our attention to the Westford Knight itself. Discovered in 1848 during the construction of a local mill, this weathered stone carving depicts a knight astride a rearing horse, complete with a shield bearing a mysterious cross-like symbol. At first glance, it might appear to be a mere fragment of a medieval European coat of arms or heraldry. However, closer examination reveals intriguing details that set it apart from ordinary stonework. Tool marks etched into the rock surface hint at the use of sophisticated tools and techniques not commonly found in North American prehistory. Proponents of the Westford Knight theory argue that these tool marks indicate that the carving was not created in situ, but was instead brought to North America intentionally by medieval European settlers. Scientists have examined the carving using cutting-edge technology to unlock its secrets. Laser scanning has revealed hidden details and three-dimensional representations, shedding light on the craftsmanship and symbolism embedded in the stone. Chemical analysis of the tool marks has suggested that the techniques used were consistent with those employed in medieval European workshops, further strengthening the case for a transatlantic connection. However, skeptics remain unconvinced. They argue that the Westford Knight is merely a skillfully carved stone monolith that predates European contact, and was likely created by indigenous peoples with knowledge of European art. They point to similarities between the carving and Native American petroglyphs, suggesting a cultural influence that can be explained without invoking theories of pre-Columbian exploration. Adding to the mystery is the enigmatic cross-like symbol emblazoned on the knight's shield. Its origins and meaning remain a source of intense debate, with some seeing it as a Templar cross or a symbol of Scottish heritage, and others interpreting it as a Native American symbol of peace or a stylized version of the North Star. As we delve deeper into this captivating enigma, we must consider the larger implications of what it means for history as we know it. If the Westford Knight is indeed linked to the Knights Templar and Sinclair's voyages, it would rewrite the narrative of early exploration, proving that medieval Europeans had reached the Americas long before Columbus and forever changing our understanding of the Age of Discovery. Meanwhile, supporters of the traditional historical account argue that the lack of concrete evidence supporting the Westford Knight theory does not disprove it outright. They contend that historical records may have been lost to time and that archaeological discoveries yet to be made could shed new light on this enigmatic carving and its true origins. In the end, the Westford Knight remains an enduring testament to the mysteries of the past. Whether it stands as a symbol of medieval exploration or a product of Native American artistry, its presence continues to captivate historians and ignite the imaginations of those who seek to uncover the secrets of a bygone era. The allure of the Westford Knight transcends its historical significance. It speaks to our innate curiosity about the unknown and our desire to explore the boundaries of human discovery. Just as the medieval explorers dared to venture into the vast expanse of the Atlantic, the Westford Knight encourages us to push the limits of our own understanding and embrace the thrill of the chase in our own pursuits of knowledge. Moreover, the enduring popularity of the Westford Knight mystery reflects our fascination with the little-known corners of history. While mainstream narratives often focus on well-documented events and famous explorers, there is a growing appreciation for the obscure tales that challenge conventional wisdom and offer alternative perspectives on the past. Through stories like that of the Westford Knight, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of history and the myriad influences that have shaped our world. So, whether you find yourself in the picturesque town of Westford or anywhere else in the vast tapestry of the internet, take a moment to appreciate the power of history to captivate and inspire. Let the legacy of the Westford Knight serve as a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is a timeless adventure, and that the greatest discoveries often lie hidden in plain sight. And if you enjoyed this journey through the enigmatic world of the Westford Knight, don't forget to stay tuned for more captivating historical tales. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and above all, keep seeking the hidden gems that make our past so endlessly fascinating. A runestone in Sweden, an ancient Greek sculpture in Virginia, a Viking sword in Canada. The world is full of archaeological finds that have completely changed our understanding of human history. But sometimes we don't have to travel halfway around the world to find something exciting. Sometimes the most intriguing historical mysteries are hiding in our own backyards. This is the story of the Westford Knight, a mysterious carving found in Massachusetts. Is it a medieval masterpiece or a modern hoax? Let's dive into this American mystery. In October 1975, a man named Lars Hansen was walking through a wooded area near Westford, Massachusetts with his metal detector. He was searching for relics from the nearby Westford State Hospital, which had been demolished just 2 years earlier. But what he found that day was much older than anything from the 20th century. Embedded in the side of a boulder was a strange block of granite inscribed with a design unlike any other. It looked like a knight in armor riding a horse. Some thought it resembled Leif Erikson, the famous Viking explorer. It took some time to get it all out of the ground, but eventually the rock was removed. Soon word spread about the discovery and people came from all over to see it. Hansen never tried to hide his face in public and even posed with the rock at one point. And so there was no mystery about who found it. But there was a mystery about what it meant. Nobody knows exactly how old the carving is, though many have come to the conclusion that it must be medieval in origin. Some think it may have been carved by Vikings, while others believe it may have been left behind by an unknown tribe of Native Americans. However, others don't believe it's either of these. Some say the whole thing is just a big rock with a little imagination. They claim it looks like a knight only if you want it to. This group believes that it's nothing more than a case of pareidolia. That's when people see recognizable shapes in otherwise meaningless things. It is also the reason why some people see images in clouds or the faces of loved ones in rocks. So in this view, the knight isn't a carving at all. Instead, it's just a rock that looks like a knight to a few very imaginative people. But those who think it is real wonder why it looks so similar to medieval carvings in Europe. They also wonder why it would have been buried in the ground in the first place. These people wondered if the statue was made by Europeans who landed in North America before Columbus, or even by the Vikings who settled in Newfoundland around 500 years ago. To answer these questions, the Westford Knight has gone through several scientific investigations. One of the first was done in 1984 by lichenometry experts. Lichenometry is the study of lichens and their growth rings. Lichens are organisms composed of fungi and algae that grow on rocks. They grow outward from their point of origin, slowly covering the rock surface. In the same way that trees have annual rings, lichens have them too. Their growth rings can tell scientists how old the organism is and how long it has been growing in a certain place. In the case of the Westford Knight, this study concluded that it was at least 500 years old, possibly even 1,000 years old or more. This would certainly make it medieval, but it doesn't tell us who carved it. In 1986, a new team of researchers came forward with a different explanation. They said the knight was only about 150 years old, meaning it could have been carved by someone living during the time of King George Washington. This team believed the whole thing was a hoax, but not everyone accepted their results. Another scientist called Dr. David A. Howard later refuted these claims and insisted that the lichen study was right. He argued that the weathering on the rock matched the lichen study's findings, but that the 1986 team hadn't done their research thoroughly enough. Dr. Howard claimed that whoever did the 1986 study made up data about lichen coverage and weathering on the rock. He also criticized their small sample size. The team only examined 3 pieces of the carving. He pointed out that they did look at key areas like the eyes and the horse's ears, which were too weathered away to be accurate anyway. Dr. Howard suggested that perhaps a better approach would be to use new 3D scanning technology to analyze the carving. In 2018, the Westford Knight was scanned with a laser to create a detailed 3D model. Scientists used this model to get a much closer look at the details of the carving. They discovered tiny ridges running along the horse's neck and bridle. At first glance, these might look like scratches, but under close examination, they looked a lot more like carving marks. There's also a hole near the top of the horse's head, which probably held an axe or adze. Researchers also noticed indentations consistent with pecking, a common method for shaping stone in pre-metalworking cultures. Together, these characteristics argue against the idea that the Westford Knight is just a random rock formation. Another clue comes from the geology of the area. The bedrock in Westford consists of schist and gneiss, hard igneous and metamorphic rocks. The nearest source of granite is more than 10 miles away. To carve the Westford Knight, someone would have had to bring the granite from elsewhere, shape it, and then bury it in the ground. This was likely a huge undertaking that required a lot of effort. Someone went to great lengths to make sure this piece of rock was hidden, which argues against the idea that it's just a fake designed to attract tourists. But if it's not a fake, why is it so controversial? After all, there are lots of mysterious carvings in the world, but not many are surrounded by as much controversy as the Westford Knight. One reason is that the site lacks context. Archaeologists always want to know the context of an object. When you excavate a site, you carefully remove layers of dirt and debris to learn about the objects you find. You can learn a lot from the soil around an object, such as whether it was buried intentionally or accidentally lost. Unfortunately, when Mr. Hansen found the Westford Knight, he didn't do an excavation. He just pulled the rock out of the ground. There wasn't a layer of dirt over it. And this makes it really difficult to learn about the statue itself. We simply do not know if it was buried on purpose or just laying in the ground where erosion put it. Furthermore, we don't know exactly where it came from. For all we know, the person who carved it may have done so within the past century. Even the lichen study from 1984 acknowledged that the rock could have been placed there recently. In fact, the original discoverer Lars Hansen claimed that the carving was planted there by Swedish immigrants. Supposedly, they wanted to leave a reminder of their homeland, but they never finished the project. However, this story doesn't explain why the carving looks like medieval European art, but even if the Westford Knight is medieval, that raises its own set of questions. If it's a genuine piece of medieval European art, why hasn't anyone come forward to claim it? After all, this would be a priceless artifact that could change history forever. There's also no evidence that Vikings ever traveled to New England. If this is a Viking carving, it completely changes our understanding of early exploration. Unfortunately, there's no easy way to answer these questions. For decades, the Westford Knight has been studied by historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts. It's generated all kinds of theories, but still nobody knows for sure what it is. Perhaps new technologies will shed light on the mystery in the future. Or maybe the truth is that sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one. Maybe it's just a rock that looks like a knight. Only time will tell what happens next with this enigmatic statue. Now check out Top 10 Craziest Archaeological Discoveries in America, or watch The Mystery of the Voynich Manuscript for another mind-bending mystery. Fascinating history. It hints that the Atlantic Ocean may not have been as impenetrable as we were taught that explorers from Scotland, or perhaps even remnants of the Templar order, could have crossed those waters a century before, Columbus carving their legacy into stone and vanishing from the record books. Imagine what that would mean. It would suggest that European contact with North America wasn't a single, dramatic event in 1492, but rather a series of forgotten attempts, quiet expeditions that left only traces behind. It would force historians to reconsider trade, navigation, and cultural exchange in the late Middle Ages. Were maps circulating in secret, maps that showed lands across the Western Sea long before Columbus claimed to have found them? Did knowledge of these places exist in whispers among sailors, nobles, or secretive groups like the Templars, only to be lost or suppressed as political powers shifted in Europe? Then there's the impact such a discovery would have on the story of the people who were already here, the indigenous nations whose ancestors had lived on this continent for thousands of years before any European arrival. If medieval explorers really did reach New England in the 1300s, what contact, if any, did they have with the native peoples? Was it peaceful? Did they trade? Or did they come and go so quickly that their presence left no mark beyond a single carving on a lonely rock? Mainstream history says there was no such contact before Columbus, but if evidence proved otherwise, it would open entirely new chapters in both Native American and European history, chapters filled with questions we haven't even thought to ask yet. And then, of course, there is the romance of it all. History isn't just about dry facts and dates. It's about the human need to explore, to push beyond the horizon, to leave something behind for future generations to find. The Westford Knight, whether medieval or modern, taps into that part of us that wants there to be more to the story, that longs for mystery and adventure in a world where so much of the past already feels mapped and measured. A forgotten knight buried in a foreign land, a secret voyage across stormy seas, a memorial carved into stone for someone who never made it home. These are the kinds of stories that remind us history is filled with moments of courage, tragedy, and wonder that don't always fit neatly into the textbooks. Even the skeptics who insist the carving is nothing more than natural scratches or a later colonial work can't fully erase the what-if that lingers in the air around the Westford Knight. Because if one day evidence did emerge, an artifact buried nearby, a medieval document hidden in some European archive, a scientific breakthrough that finally dated the carving with certainty, it would rewrite Centuries of assumptions in a single stroke. Columbus might still be remembered for launching Europe's age of empire in the Americas, but he would no longer stand alone at the beginning of that story. Others would be there, two men like Henry Sinclair and Sir James Gunn, stepping out of the shadows of legend and into the pages of real history, changing how we understand the past and how we see the world's connections long before the modern era ever began. And so, after exploring the discovery of the Westford Knight, the legend of Sir James Gunn, the tantalizing whispers of the Knights Templar, the countless hours of scientific study, the voices of skeptics demanding hard proof, and the questions about what it could all mean for American history, were left standing before that same weathered stone in Westford, Massachusetts, just as countless others have done before us. It bears its faint carving, silent yet unyielding, inviting each generation to look closer, to argue, to dream, to wonder if this is really the resting place of a medieval knight or simply a story carved from human imagination. Because that is the power of the Westford Knight. It sits at the crossroads of history and mystery, fact and folklore, daring us to question the narratives we've been taught. Whether it's the mark of Henry Sinclair's lost explorers, the work of a wandering colonial settler, or merely the random scratches of nature itself, its presence continues to spark debate, curiosity, and a sense of adventure that refuses to fade. Perhaps one day new evidence will emerge to settle the matter once and for all. Or perhaps the truth will remain just out of reach, leaving the Westford Knight exactly as it is today, a puzzle, a legend, a reminder that history still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered.